on Economic Development, Public Buildings, and Emergency Management will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. Chair also asks unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder, if members wish to insert a document into the record, please also email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. Chair now recognizes himself for the purposes of an opening statement for 5 minutes. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today to discuss the site selection process for a new Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, headquarters building. At some point, this committee is expected to receive an official General Services Administration prospectus requesting our authorization for a new FBI headquarters building. I will say up front, I'm not convinced the FBI needs a brand new building. While the world has become more dangerous, the FBI finds time to investigate parents at school board meetings and uses its resources to try and silence dissent across the country. So I'm not on board with the idea that the FBI needs a shiny new building at the taxpayer's expense, but what I may agree with the FBI on are the questions surrounding the current GSA site selection process, a process that this committee specifically oversees. The process to build a new FBI headquarters is probably a textbook example of why big government and bureaucracy is so bad, inefficient, and generally ineffective at the end of the day. This whole process started more than 15 years ago. I mean, 15 years ago. You think about if you're trying to build a new home for yourself and somebody told you you're going to probably have to wait 15 years. And I know I'm not casting aspersions on you two fine gentlemen, but that's America looks at that and says, what the heck's wrong with you folks? And after 15 years, there hasn't been a shovel in the ground. And of course, the cost has, as you know, ballooned, probably out of sight. Ironically, if it wasn't for the bureaucratic maze in politics, right now, there would already be a new FBI headquarters in Maryland or Virginia, likely. Going as far back as 2011, neither the FBI nor Congress thought it was realistic to rely on appropriated funds for the project. No one thought Congress would appropriate what grew to billions of dollars for new construction. The FBI, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, and members of this committee all expressed that if this was going to get done, it would need to be done as a public-private partnership, leveraging private financing. But they were all overruled by whom? Unelected bureaucrats in the executive branch who just don't like P3s or public-private partnerships. So it came as no great surprise when the GSA canceled the procurement in 2017 for a lack of funds, more precisely a shortfall of over $800 million. But when the Trump administration attempted to propose a more realistic solution, including a P3, the Democrats cried foul again and began investigations into allegations which again halted the project. Ironically, the current Department of Justice Inspector General found no evidence of any improper considerations or motives as the Democrats claimed at the time. So instead of going back to evaluate the FBI's current needs, language was slipped into an appropriations bill directing GSA to select from among 3 sites evaluated a decade ago. Again, so efficient, and I'm sure right in line with the FBI's mission and needs. The language went further to require GSA to consider not just mission requirements, but also sustainability and equity. So here we are today. To the witnesses, I get what you're doing, what the appropriations language has directed you to do, or I get that that's what you are doing. But now there are questions about the recent site selection process. During the process, GSA adjusted the weighting of the factors considered, including increasing the value given to equity and decreasing the value for mission. I got to tell you, as a former member of the U.S. military, the mission is what drove everything I did. What time I woke up, how I dressed, how I prepared myself, what I ate. Every single thing I did was dependent on the mission. All the other stuff was irrelevant to me, and it should be the same for the FBI. It should be the same. They've got a very important job, and they need to remain focused on that. And it's not their fault in this regard that we have taken their eye off the prize. We have forced them to do that. GSA increased the value for cost, but it is not clear what costs were considered. Ultimately, the site selection authority selected the Greenbelt, Maryland site, overruling the panel that was convened, and there appears to be little explanation as to why. So we convened a panel to do this, and once they came up with a decision, then it was countermanded, which begs the question, why even have the panel if you're just going to decide otherwise? I hope today we can get some answers as the committee prepares to review any proposal for the new FBI headquarters. Finally, I want to note we wanted to hear from Ms. Albert about her role in this process, and despite being invited well in advance, we learned just on Friday she would not appear before the subcommittee today. So we will no longer have a second panel, but we will be sending her a letter to continue to seek the answers we need, and we'll have to consider other options available to the subcommittee so that we can hear her perspective in the future, which will be very important to getting to the bottom of this issue. With that, I yield. I now recognize the ranking member Titus, for 5 minutes for her opening statement.